Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Many weeks after the Senate's confirmation of the board of the Niger Delta Development Commission, it is yet to assume duties at the Commission's head office in Port Harcourt, Nigeria, sadly to the disadvantage of the people of the Niger Delta region. Presently managed by a third consecutive interim management committee since February 2019, after President Buhari dissolved the Senator Ndomegba-led board, the NDDC has been operating nearly 1 year without a substantive board, which raises the question, does this bode well for a planned and sustainable development of the region? Joining us this morning from our Arise Abuja studio to discuss this and other issues is the National President of the Ijaw Youth Council, Eric Omare. Eric, welcome to the morning show. Good morning.
Thank you so much, and good morning.
Yes, you're welcome. Now, Eric, you are president of the Ijaw Youth Council. What are your thoughts on the way the Niger Delta Development Commission has been politicized? The NDDC, in my understanding, is about the development of the Niger Delta to make a positive impact on the lives of the people. But since the transition from OMPADEC to NDDC, it's all been about politics, involving the people themselves, the governors of the region, and then other stakeholders. Why do you think there's this emphasis on politics rather than development?
I think that the idea behind the establishment of the Niger Delta Development Commission is fantastic. The law establishing the commission is also very good. But the problem we have is with respect to the implementation of the law establishing the NDDC. Instead of strictly complying with the law with respect to the running of the NDDC, emphasis is placed on political patronage. In other words, the NDDC is being used as a platform to patronize the party in power instead of using it as a platform to develop the Niger Delta region. And this is not peculiar to the present government. That has been the situation since the NDDC was established in the year 2000 by an act of the National Assembly. And like you rightly observe, from January to date, we have had 4 different leadership in NDDC. The Ndomegba-led board was dissolved in January. An interim management committee headed by Professor Brambaifa was set up. It managed the commission up till about August, where it was dissolved, and a substantive board was sent. Names of the substantive board were published by the presidency, and the list was sent to the National Assembly. And we had thought that with that, it will bring some level of sanity and stability to the commission. But unfortunately, and to our surprise, the Minister for Niger Delta Affairs, Chief Godswill Akpabio, set up an interim management committee that is not contemplated by the NDDC Establishment Act. Because under the NDDC Establishment Act, there is no room for an interim management committee in the first place. And if there is going to be any interim management committee at all, it has to be born out of necessity, which does not exist in the present circumstances, because the president has already exercised his powers under Section 2 to nominate members of the substantive board to the National Assembly. And the National Assembly has confirmed members of the substantive board. So what ought to happen in any society is for the substantive board to take over the leadership immediately, as it ought to be done. But 2 weeks after that clearance, we still have a contraption called an interim management committee presiding over the NDDC in flagrant violation of the law establishing the NDDC. So in summary, the problem we have with the NDDC is failure to adhere to the law establishing the NDDC and using it for political patronage instead of development of the Niger Delta region.
Thank you, Barrister Omare. It was reported that you, well, as a result of what you've just explained, your unhappiness with this interim board and your insistence that the duly nominated and confirmed NDDC board should be allowed to take over management of NDDC. It was reported that you were going to storm the gates of the NDDC in Port Harcourt and organize this mass action. But you were countered by another faction within your group, Ijaw Youth Council, who are in support of the actions of the Minister for the Niger Delta,
You know, Nigeria is a very funny country. This is a country where even if somebody is murdered in the broad daylight, you also have people who will support the murderer. So we are not surprised by those who are supporting the illegal actions of the Minister for Niger Delta Affairs. As far as we are concerned, they are hired to do what they are doing. It has no impact on what we are doing, because what we are doing has the support of stakeholders, it has the backing of law, and it also has the backing of good conscience. Those who are supporting the management, the interim management committee, have not come up with any justifiable reason why there should be an interim management committee. All that they have been saying is that the interim management committee has the blessing of Mr. President. And what we are saying that, look, Nigeria, we are in a constitutional democracy. Ours is not an emperor. A constitutional democracy simply means that we are a country that is ruled according to law. The office of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is a creature of law. Therefore, the President must act according to law. Under the NDDC Act, where there is in place a substantive board, there is no room for an interim management committee. So what that simply means is that whether the President is aware, whether he's not aware, is of no moment. And also, we do not care what some hired people are saying. And most importantly, the fact that we are raising a key issue of law, an issue that is in tandem with the developmental aspiration of the people of the Niger Delta, an issue that everybody of good conscience is in support of, and some people are still going ahead to support an illegal contractor called IMC, goes to show the intention behind those who are supporting the IMC. And we have said that, look, what those people want to achieve, number one, is to use it to patronize their loyalists. Secondly, to compromise the forensic audit that has been ordered by the President. Because the reason why they said they have set up the interim management committee is to provide the ambience, the conducive environment for the forensic audit to be done. And we ask, what is the conducive environment that needs to be provided for the forensic audit to be carried out that cannot be done by the substantive board? In the interim management committee, you have a lawyer, my colleague, Dr. Gwene, as the acting managing director, who ordinarily ought to be in the board as Rivers State representative. Then in the substantive board, you have a proven chartered accountant, Chief Bernard Okumamba, as the managing director. So between Dr. Gwene and Bernard Okumamba, who is in a better position to provide that ambience? A chartered accountant who has knowledge of audit. You said he cannot provide the ambience, but you have a lawyer in an unfamiliar terrain trying to provide the ambience for forensic audit to be done. So we as far as we are concerned, we are not convinced by what they are saying. And most importantly, we have also contested the interim management committee on the basis that the Minister for Niger Delta Affairs, Chief Godswill Akpabio, who set up that interim management committee, is an interested party in the forensic audit. And our reason for saying this is this. Mr. Godswill Akpabio was governor of Akwa Ibom State from 2007 to 2015. And within this period, he nominated Executive Director Project. Within that period, he nominated the Substantive Managing Director. Also, the immediate past Managing Director, Substantive Managing Director, Mr. Isima Ikere, is his own close political ally. So the question is, how can he supervise a forensic audit that involves his close political allies? You cannot be a judge in your own case. So we're saying that, look, it is only Mr. President that can set up the forensic audit and supervise it directly, and not Mr. Godswill Akpabio, who is an interested party. That's one of the plank of our position to the interim management committee beyond its illegality.
Okay, so you spoke about failure to adhere to the law that established the NDDC itself. And of course, this is a double-edged sword. There are arguments on both sides of this, and you've laid it out pretty clear. You showed where the law hasn't been followed, etc. But it's of no doubt that regardless of all of the politicizing of this issue, the main issue still remains the welfare of the people of the Niger Delta. And at the end of the day, something needs to be done, and we need to see action that is actually consistent within that particular region of the country. What do you want to see as National President of the Ijaw Youth Council? What do you want to see at this point in time coming from the NDDC or any other institute or organization that is focused on the restoration of the Niger Delta?
What I want to see first and foremost is for the President, as a matter of urgency, to inaugurate the substantive board of the NDDC, headed by Chief Odubu as chairman and Chief Bernard Okumamba as the managing director. Then, unlike previous leadership, we expect this leadership to face the business of governance. Before now, the problem with the NDDC has been that everybody who attain the position of the managing director or executive director or chairman of the board see the NDDC as a stepping stone to the governorship of their state. We do not expect this present leadership to take the same line. I have had interaction long ago with some members of the management committee, and they assured me that they are not going to contest for governorship of their state, because that has been the problem. When people become NDDC managing director or executive director or chairman, they want to be governors of their state, and that distracts them. So we want a substantive leadership with a secure tenure that will face the business of governance, that will face the sustainable development of the Niger Delta. The Niger Delta is in need of a lot of federal government intervention. For example, before the Sesema Ikire's board was dissolved, we were working on a road as stakeholders supporting the NDDC to construct a road from Warri to Escravos Terminal. Now, if such a road is constructed with interest from multinationals around that area, it has a capacity to address some of the problems we have in Lagos with tank farms and the rest. Because those tank farm owners can easily come to some of the areas close to the Escravos area to establish tank farms that will boost the economy of the Niger Delta. Because part of the problem present in the Niger Delta is that there is no opportunity for young men. And for some of us who are youth leaders, it is very, very difficult to survive in the Niger Delta. If I go to my office as a lawyer, instead of attending to clients, what I attend to is people who are asking for one favor or the other, and I do not have the capacity to provide those favors. So we want a substantive leadership of the NDDC that will face the development of the NDDC without political interference. And this is very important. The political interference in the NDDC is not from the ordinary people in the Niger Delta. The political interference is from the presidency. So we will advise that when the substantive board is inaugurated, they should be given the free hand to administer the NDDC in accordance with the law, without political interference from the presidency and those who may have helped them to attain whatever position that they have attained. Because without addressing that problem, the NDDC cannot achieve its statutory objectives.
Eric, we need to go on a short commercial break. When we return, the conversation will continue. We'll get back to you shortly. Thank you very much for your insights. You're still watching The Morning Show here on Arise News. You're still watching The Morning Show here on the Arise News channel. And still with us in our Abuja studio is the National President of the Ijaw Youth Council, Eric Omare. Now, Eric, thank you for staying with us. Now, we've talked about the issues of leadership, the disagreement over whether there should be an interim management committee or a substantive board should be allowed to assume office. But let me draw your attention to another issue. I mean, the NDDC has been a target in terms of the integrity of the various boards. The various boards that have been there before now, I'm told, have been investigated. And then there was this report by the acting director of projects, Dr. Cairo Ojuobo, who even pointed out that a particular senator alone is responsible for 300 projects, 120 of which have been fully paid for. And yet, you don't see most of it on the ground. I don't know whether you have any information about this particular senator whose identity has not been disclosed. But I guess that will not be an isolated case. The House of Representatives, the Committee on the Niger Delta Development Commission, is also probing the activities of the NDDC over the years. Does the Ijaw Youth Council, does it have a position on the manner in which, NDDC has become, a symbol also for corrupt practices?
Yes, we have a position. Our position is that the NDDC from the year 2000, when it was established with the first board from the year 2001 till the dissolution of the last interim management committee, has not been run the way it ought to be. There haven't been financial probity in the management of the NDDC. So we want the mess to be cleaned up. But in trying to do that, some persons are trying to take advantage of the mess in the NDDC to also commit further financial atrocity. For example, the president, when the governors of the Niger Delta visited him, ordered for a forensic audit. So we had expected that the president will follow up that directive with the appointment of international reputable organizations to carry out a forensic audit of the NDDC. But instead, what you will have is an interim management committee with its members making allegations on a daily basis. And we feel that while we support the forensic audit in totality, while we support respect for the financial prudence in the NDDC, what the interim management committee, through its managing director and executive director project, Chief Ijaw Youth, is trying to do is to compromise the forensic audit ordered by the president. And the reason why we are saying so is this. Now, when you make an allegation that a particular senator has 300 contracts without mentioning his name, I remember that senator managers challenged him to mention the name of the senator, and he refused to manage it. Now, the implication is that by the time you have the forensic auditors and the findings of the forensic auditors do not align with the allegations that you have made, then you have called to question the essence of the forensic audit. So I thought that the proper thing is, Mr. President haven't said there is going to be a forensic audit. The all stakeholders should have allowed an unfettered forensic audit. And in our view, an unfettered forensic audit will be a forensic audit ordered by the president and supervised directly by the president. Because stakeholders, so many stakeholders in the Niger Delta region, one way or the other, are involved in this mess. So we do not want people that are involved in this mess to be part and parcel of that process. For example, people like Ijaw Youth, who was appointed by the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, who we have alleged that is an interested person, is not in a position to superintend that process or to be making allegations of corruption in the in the NDDC. So while we support the forensic audit of the Niger Delta, but we want an audit that will not be compromised by stakeholders in the Niger Delta region, and that's an audit that will be appointed and supervised directly by Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. But then that leads me, what you said, you're requesting or demanding that the president should supervise the audit directly. This is in line with the NDDC Act, Section 7, subsection 3, which vests control, supervision, operation of the NDDC under the President of Nigeria. But then what about the President's right to delegate his authority to any of his ministers, in this case, the Minister for the Niger Delta? I ask this, and I want your thoughts on this, because a group of lawyers, you may be aware, is suing the President, the Attorney General, and the Minister of the Niger Delta, Godswill Akpabio, and asking the courts to interpret Sections 1 and that Section 7, subsection 3 of the NDDC Act. Where do you stand on this?
You see, the Office of the President exists to protect the interests of Nigerians. And here is a situation where not only that the law gives the president the power, where if the president fails to exercise the powers given to him, the essence of that law will not be achieved. So while we concede that the president can delegate his powers, but we are in a situation whereby it is necessary for the president to directly exercise his powers, because the man that he has delegated the powers to is an interested party in the issue under contention. So beyond the legality and otherwise of his powers to delegate and the rest, we are talking of what is good for the people of Nigeria, most particularly the people of the Niger Delta region. So, and even the law is on his side. So I don't see the reason for the delegation. And mind you, during the October 1st broadcast, Mr. President said that he's delegating his powers to the Minister for Niger Delta to ensure effectiveness. But the delegation of that power has turned out to be counterproductive to the development of the Niger Delta. Therefore, the proper thing for Mr. President to do is to directly exercise his powers in the interest of the NDDC and the development of the Niger Delta region.
I guess the president's thinking behind that would be, if I am going to delegate this to someone under one of the MDAs, it would go towards the Ministry of the Niger Delta, being that close to call. But you said that being with Godswill Akpabio being an interested party, it doesn't really sit well with you. So I wanted to ask you, if per se the president was to then have delegated this to someone that wasn't an interested party, would you still have the same stance, or would your position be different?
No, let me say this: when the president delegated its powers to the Ministry of Niger Delta. Some of us thought that that was a good idea to enable the Ministry of Niger Delta coordinate the overall development of the Niger Delta to avoid duplication of functions. Because there are sometimes the Ministry of Niger Delta will be carrying on the particular project, the NDDC will be doing the same thing. So we thought that that was the best thing. But unfortunately, we have somebody at the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs who is an interested party. And also, most importantly, since he became the minister, some of us had celebrated his appointment at the Ministry of Niger Delta, thinking that because the problem of the Niger Delta Ministry is lack of funding, and with his personality, it will be able to galvanize stakeholders to get more funds. But unfortunately, all the attention of the minister has been about the NDDC, instead of the overall development of the Niger Delta. So it has turned out not what we had thought earlier. So if the person was not an interested party, my position would not have been the same. But again, further evidence has shown that this idea of interference with the affairs of the NDDC when you have a Niger Deltan as minister has been there. In 2008, a group of civil society organizations headed by Comrade Joseph Abba did a survey in the Niger Delta, and the outcome of the survey is that they want the NDDC to be domiciled in the office of the LGF. The reason being that when the Niger Deltan is the minister of Niger Delta and he supervises the NDDC, he likes to use the NDDC as an extension of his office to suit his political interests, to patronize his political structures in the region to the disadvantage of the Niger Delta people. So I think that above all, from the evidence on ground, it will make more sense for the NDDC supervision to be under the office of the Secretary of Government of the Federation.
We have just about a minute left of this segment of the program. But before we go, let's move beyond the NDDC. And I would just like your response to be very brief. Now, what do you make of the election in Bayelsa State vis-a-vis the role of youth? I mean, you are president of the Ijaw Youth Council. But we see that, yes, well, while the Ijaw Youth Council is concerned about policies and development, many youths in the Niger Delta are still being used, to snatch ballot boxes, to break people's heads. What's your take on that? Just briefly, because we've got to go.
We appeal to our people to maintain law and order. Unfortunately, there were, before the elections, instant challenges of insecurity in some parts of Niger Delta, but in some part of Bayelsa State. But substantially, I think that what the outcome of the Bayelsa election is a reflection of the wish of the Bayelsa people. And in conclusion, let me also say that the National Assembly should not entertain any budget from the NDDC by the Interim Management Committee, because under Section 18 of the NDDC Act, only the substantive board can submit a budget.
Thank you, Eric Omare, President, Ijaw Youth Council.